What's up? Let's go!
Damn.
I love you, Nick!
Fuck, that was
I love you!
Fuck, fuck, fuck.
Let's go,
Good shit,
boys.
Mikey. Good shit, Mikey.
That was sick. Holy. I'm the best player! Fucking good, baby! Get out of my fucking lobby, bro! Woo!
Apex Legends used to be my favorite game. So much so that I have over 10 days on PC and almost a month on PS4. It was an extension of the universe that I loved, that being Titanfall, and put a spin on the Titan and Pilot abilities. It was amazing how, for a long while, I had no idea that it was actually connected to the Titanfall universe until 3 days after I downloaded it, when I found my first flatline rifle. In fact, Apex kind of opened up the opportunity of commentary to me. I started doing commentary videos back when Season 1 was released with my first ever Salty Waters video. I'm looking back at it, and it's really embarrassing to look at it and think to myself, man, this is what I started with. However, with Season 5, I was hugely disappointed. This was last season, as of recording, and the game changed some fundamental parts of what I enjoyed, that being most character abilities and changing weapons around like the Mastiff and the Peacekeeper. That being said, it added a few things that I liked, like they brought back the skull-piercing rounds. That's really it. Now, I'm not giving the game enough credit. In fact, I still loved the game during this rough time. So when I heard that they were adding crossplay, Nintendo Switch version, a Steam release, and a whole shift in the current weapon meta in Season 6, I thought to myself, this is it. This will bring more life into this game. It's gonna happen, and I'm gonna be part of it. But, again, I was even more disappointed. The Evo Shield change mainly changed the whole way the game was played. The meta felt more like how it was in Season 2 than it did in any other season. People would camp in buildings, wait for everything to happen without them, and then right when everyone is weak, they'd pop out and gun everybody down. Only for them to upgrade their shield a little bit. Then the Steam and Nintendo Switch release was delayed, crossplay was postponed, and practically everything that could bring more attention to Apex had been delayed. It was a shame. And eventually, most of the stuff that got reverted or added into the game. The Evo Shield changes were actually changed to act more like normal shields, still maintaining that aspect of dealing damage increases shields, which finally felt like encouraged people to play aggressive and pick out fights like in competitive. But with everything they added, I must say the most fun thing they added was the new character Rampart. By no means is Rampart impactful or top tier legend. So you might ask, then why pick her or player to begin with? And well, that's a fair question, and to that I answer, she's the most fun on the roster. As a defense legend, she's intended to be an area denial character who benefits from setting up in one area and holding off enemies to try and push up on you. But where's the fun in that? Yeah, she's a good area denier, but that's not all she can do. In fact, I think she plays a good support role as well. Every defense class has some sort of punishment or support for their team with their utility. You know, Wattson with her fences that deal damage and her pylon that slowly heals shields, Caustic whose traps deal direct damage to health, which also set up as a form of intel for the team when someone walks into one, and Gibraltar's Dome that not only serves as a way to get enemies into some quick duels, but also as a way to quickly revive teammates and has 25% healing and speed increase when inside of it. Now, Rampart's support ability is that her walls allow her to lock down an area that enemies are in, serve as a cover when reviving teammates, a minor blockage when enemies are pushing behind you, and a way to protect teammates who need some quick cover to reload or heal. Parkour, you can do height advantages, helping your team, sniper deal some extra damage when shooting at those enemies across the map, and when you're playing the low ground and using the amp damage to take down those at the high ground. There's so much more to these walls that I can fit in this video. In fact, I would argue it's the most versatile ability in the game. But like I said earlier, she's not top tier, and that she's not impactful to the game, which I still stand by. And although I might have sounded contradictory right there, saying how strong her walls are, her strength in the walls is only weakened by her exploitations. Let's start off with her most apparent, her gun. Her ultimate is called Sheila, which is literally just a minigun that gets more accurate as it fires. What's so exploitable about it is that, well, the gun has a limited view range, which is about a 90-degree cone in front of the barrel. And its even worse factor is that it stays still in a game where movement is a significant factor in the fights. Yeah, editing Sam here. So I realized I made a mistake in this video after editing it and after recording it. I don't know why I said 90 degrees. I even scripted it to say 120. But it is in fact 120 degrees cone right in front of the barrel from side to side. Something else I forgot to mention is that you can't look down instantly. You have to only look down at 53 degrees from the cone, and up is about 71 degrees. So with that brings more problems, and I'll be getting into that at the end of the video. Anyways, continue. Pairing both of those together, it will not take enemies long to find a way to exploit your gun. As fun as it might be to place down your sentry and mow down everyone close to you, most engagements with the weapon should be taken from mid-range to far range, because those who are closest to you will have to move just a little bit in order to take advantage of the small cone. Not to mention the animation to spin the gun and fire. It also takes longer. Still, you can counter that by moving sporadically around with your aim to move your body in order to dodge the bullets your enemies shoot at you, if they're even shooting at you yet. This mostly goes for PC players, but any sort of movement will assist you on playing a console as well. The gun is by far one of the weakest ults in the game, competing with Loba's ultimate, which doesn't do anything besides pull in a bunch of loot on the ground. Now, is it useless? No. Its DPS is actually one of the highest in the game, and you can tell that when you just shred through someone who is full HP with red armor. And as you trick enemies into pushing up on you and your teammates, when you have a sentry set up with a wall in front of you, you got one of the best positions to be in. But then again, it's still exploitable. All they need to do is find an opening and take advantage. One thing to note about your walls and gun is you can have 3 guns up at once and 5 walls up at once. You drop into the game with 3 walls ready to be placed, and you regenerate them quickly as well. Your ult charges unusually fast for some reason, and that allows you to set up and pack up pretty frequently. That being said, let's go back to the perfect position analogy I used earlier. As I said, baiting people around corners into your gun is good, but do you know what's horrible? The cone. It comes back to the cone. If my team and I are focusing on one squad in front, and my gun can't turn completely, what happens to my back? Well, I'm glad you asked. You are as vulnerable as ever. You could place another wall behind you, just you, but if someone's shooting it down while you focus on the squad in front, you most likely won't even realize they got taken down, or worse, they could focus on your team before taking down you and your gun, leaving you in an even more vulnerable situation. Where you previously had the upper hand, your previous enemy squad now has taken advantage, leaving you and your team to be sandwiched in a very uncomfortable way. And sadly, there's no way to counter that besides being more aggressive with your placements and allowing them to go down and back up again. In fact, I kind of feel that if you play TF2 and you know the engineer, you have to play a certain way, much like you have to play with Rampart. A way that doesn't let you be too, parental around your buildings. You just need to let them go down and build them back up and continue going from there. Or you could use the alternate way and just be looser with your builds. You can set them up as you go and run around them while not solely relying on them to keep you alive. I feel as if Rampart has 3 playstyles that I call the Trapper, the Supporter, and the Aggressor. One where you bait the enemies into your gun and trap them into a fight, one where you support your teammates from the front lines, allowing them to pick up their own fights, and lastly, one that weaponizes you to be more aggressive and place the enemies in a pinch spot to take advantage of the fight. Her passive ability itself is actually useless. I don't really understand how selective it is. It's a buff to LMGs, which to be fair is pretty nice to use an LMG like a rifle, but at the same time, with only 3 LMGs in the game, one of which doesn't even have a magazine and instead has a cooldown rate. Not only that, but when you first start playing Rampart, you feel this need to pick up an LMG in order to feel useful. But in reality, if you're not good with an LMG, don't bother using one. I have a section later in the video that I go over ways to change her to make her somewhat more impactful on the game. But again, her passive makes LMGs more useful, but unlike other passives in the game, you aren't guaranteed to see it, especially in higher levels of play where they prefer shotguns and SMGs for close quarter combat. Unlike other passives in the game, you aren't guaranteed to see this one, especially in higher levels of play where professionals tend to use more of shotguns and SMGs to take on their fights. So for this part, I'm going to go ahead and describe some team compositions that help with Rampart playstyles. So for the support role, I recommend you bring in a Gibraltar and a Bloodhound. Seeing you'll be focusing on supporting these two, there's no need to bring a Lifeline to focus down on rezzing, and you have two teammates who are able to pick and choose their fights and paths. For Trapper, I recommend the trapping duo Wattson and Caustic. If Caustic can attract attention and Wattson can cover your flank, you have a good setup for your gun and walls as a way to eliminate one of Rampart's weaknesses. This playstyle is very campy though, so I'd imagine most people would stay away from that sort of thing. And lastly, we have the Aggressor. So I have two ideas for this one, a Lifeline and a Wraith, or a Lifeline and a Bangalore. Remember, these two will not be relied on. Instead, they need you to be as aggressive as they are. The Lifeline is there so that way they can focus down on rezzing you and your Bangalore or your Wraith, while you provide quick cover, area denial, and damage opportunities for everybody. If you run a Bangalore, I recommend that they smoke out an area before you set up. The reason why I'm saying that is because if the enemy sees you setting up your wall, which is a problem because if they shoot it down, then it deals damage to you. Surprisingly, it does quite a bit of damage to you as well, about 45. Denying that sight of you placing down a quick wall or an amp shield or your gun is huge. A Wraith is perfect for any kind of aggressive playstyle. Small hitboxes plus the ability to just magically vanish, as well as set up a way for you and your other teammate to go through portals, rush through. It's a perfect combination. Me personally, I play more of an aggressive support class than a trapper class. I feel like trapping classes and campy playstyles usually ends up, well, having me dead. In a game where aggression rewards more than, well, passiveness, you'll find yourself losing more fights than you will be winning them. Now, let's talk about potential buffs and potential reworks for Rampart. So let's start off with buffs. I think we need to look at her passive ability and just how weak it is. So let's say instead of changing it altogether, we change it just a bit by adding in every other weapon type. Rampart's character is based on modifications, so instead of limiting those mods to one type of weapon, we make a whole other mods for those other weapons. For example, for SMGs and pistols, we can increase the rate of fire and decrease the horizontal recoil. Assault rifles, we boost their damage drop-off range, allowing them to be used at longer ranges. Sniper rifles could have a faster reload/changeover time, and have shotguns have a decreased bullet spread. This way, you're guaranteed to see Rampart's passive ability without feeling like you need to force yourself to use an LMG. And that's not saying that her LMG buff is horrible. In fact, I think it's great to pick up at least a Spitfire if you have a flatline or something like that, because the rate of fire, plus the reload speed, plus the amount of ammo that you have is perfect for taking down those same gunfights that you would take with your gun. It's a huge buff to one of those LMGs, while I feel as one of them is completely useless and the other still remains at the same potential as it could have been before. Now let's talk about her wall ability. And honestly, I kind of don't want to change it. It's so intricate and complex, yet so simple and easy to use that it just fits with the rest of the kit. But if anything, I think they should really do nerf the damage that it does when somebody destroys the wall while you're building it. 45 damage is, I believe, the max, and if you do get hit with that and you have no shield to start of the match, it hits like a truck. And especially when you're setting up, it takes a while to make sure that you don't take up any damage, well, extra damage from the enemies. Her ultimate. I have two ideas for this one, so stick around. One buff we can use is to allow the gun to rotate 360 degrees around itself, allowing for her to keep track of her targets and properly secure those kills. And really, that's just the buff, that's it. But I said I had two ideas. And while this next one is more of a functioning of a rework, I feel like it's still something that could be added into the game and be completely seen as normal. But let's go back onto the buff and why I think that this is more realistic to add into the game than the rework that I have planned. Sheila's biggest weakness is that she can lose track of her targets and she can't see behind her, as well as standing still in a game where I already mentioned movement matters. I mean, there are so many intricate ways to move in Apex Legends that people praise the fact that Apex is just a movement game like Titanfall was. You can wall jump, you can wall run. That's really difficult to do. B-hopping, sliding around, it's such an integral part that if you add a character whose kit makes you stand still, it feels like you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Allowing for that 360-degree rotation gets rid of 2 weaknesses. Mine out of the possible 3 or 4. For 1, you can finally keep track of fast-moving targets. For 2, you can kind of, watch your back if you're not gunning down people in front of you. And 3, close range will be a breeze. It will be so easy to fight people close range. But even then, they might still find a way to outgun you. And that's to say something about the kit, that even if you buff it, it's still going to feel weak if it has that standstill mentality. Which leads me to my rework idea. The rework that I have is remove Sheila from sticking to the ground and get rid of that infinite reload. Let Rampart instead carry Sheila around as a weapon. The zoom would be, it would need a change, because a really mobile turret with zoom abilities is going to be pretty powerful, and that's not all either. The other part of the rework might not be too enjoyable, but definitely get rid of the infinite magazines, as I already said. But as of now, Sheila has 173 rounds in a magazine. She also has infinite magazines so long as she stands still and isn't destroyed. So scrap the infinite mags. 200 round magazines, limited. There's no infinite reloads, none of that. Next, let's talk about the possibility of mobility. Well, yeah, there you go. That's funny. First off, it would be unfair to make her as fast as other legends when holding Sheila. Instead, we make her slower and remove the ability to jump and climb. Sliding is all game, but it takes a little longer than an average legend to get up. And it's not like the devs didn't think of this either. She's holding the gun in the photo too. So I genuinely don't understand why they just didn't let Sheila become this pickup turret that Rampart can go around and gun with. And personally, I think the devs wanted to add Rampart without wanting to change the other characters' placements in the meta, and they definitely succeeded in that department. They made her fun, but not viable. Where she's intricate, she's exploitable. Where she's powerful, she has a weakness. And even in pros' minds, they just never really notice her. There are legends who do her job just easier. And I think that's what scares people off, is that she's not as easy as people want. But that just gets rid of the skill gap between players. I'd like to think that my idea for Rampart keeps that skill gap, but also makes it so that she is stronger to play as and have an impact on the way the game shapes out to be. By no means do I think Respawn will consider these changes, or if they would even watch this video. But I still think if they wanted to change Rampart, starting with the idea of the buffs I presented would be a good start. And that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys really soon. And I'm feeling like posting some more Rampart content. Man, finally! I worked really hard on this video, right? Thank God they didn't change Rampart or anything about the game in so long, right? The new season came out and they buffed Rampart. I know. Now, I did want Rampart to be buffed, and the way that they buffed her in this new season, Season 7, actually impressed me. Now, with the new season, there came a new character, a new map, no new guns, but they also shifted the weapon meta again. This time, I felt like the weapon meta didn't necessarily need it, because it just felt that the time to kill in this game was really short, and yeah, that's about it. It's just really short to kill somebody. However, that being said, the way that they buffed Rampart actually impressed me. Beforehand, the walls would take up about 4 seconds, and if enemies shot it, then it would blow up and you'd take damage. Now, the walls are about 3-second build up, as well as if the enemies shoot it while it's building up, instead of dealing damage to you, it's just normal, no explosion, it just destroys the wall. Another buff that they gave her was that it takes less time for the gun to start shooting. They decreased it from 2 seconds to 1.25 seconds, as well as the build-up from that 2 seconds as well as to 1.25 seconds. I'm still kind of getting used to these changes, but I should mention that Rampart does feel a lot stronger than she did last season in this new one, and it really does show. If you play Rampart in Season 6 and you played her in Season 7, you can noticeably tell the difference because of just how much powerful she is now. Buffed or not, Rampart still is not a top tier character. In fact, she's still one of the bottom of the barrel ones, which really does suck for someone like me. But I have another complaint, was that the new character that they added, Horizon, is actually a top tier character. Now, my question, and why I have such a problem with it, is why would they add a character who's so powerful after adding someone who's so weak? I don't know, I think it's just me being petty, but I have to admit, Horizon is super fun to play, almost as fun as our favorite Rampart, but, you know, I just wish that Rampart, you know, would be able to see some more action and some more ranks in the game. But besides that, I genuinely do think that the devs are starting to look at Rampart and starting to notice that she just doesn't hold up to all the other characters, and they're slowly starting to buff her. Apex has this curse, that's what I call it, a curse, that they release a character who is really weak compared to the other ones, then they'll go ahead and then they'll buff it to beyond levels that we can comprehend. I mean, that happened with Revenant when he first joined, and nobody picked him because of just how pathetic and weak he was. And then they buffed him, and then, oh, well, now he's a top tier. And then they added Loba, who at the start was garbage. In fact, I made a statement earlier that her ultimate was the weakest in the game, next to Rampart's. But then they buffed her this season, and her ultimate is way better than Rampart's now, because you can take up infinite ammo from anywhere that the dome is. So if there's a dome there and all that ammo is sticking to that dome, you can pick up that ammo as much as you want. So yeah, that kind of shut me down earlier too. Finishing this video up, I have to admit Rampart is still super fun to play, and I've honestly got a couple of wins with her in ranked, and that really surprises me because I don't typically like playing ranked. I like playing casually, you know, stream it to my friends on the Discord, and yeah, it's just, you can tell that the devs are starting to put more effort into Rampart and want to see her succeed and pass what she used to be. And I think these buffs and reworks are a good way to indicate that we're stepping in the right direction. All in all, I'm happy with where she's at right now, but I do want to see her do better. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Yeah, and see ya. Oh, new outro button.
Oh, yeah. Remember